Digger Maines never expected the truth to come out in the way it did. He always believed the past could stay quiet if no one spoke about it. But early one morning, federal agents arrived at his old workshop, deep in the Smoky Mountains. The building looked like nothing special to anyone passing by, but people who lived nearby always felt something unusual about it. To them, it seemed alive in a way ordinary buildings aren't. The agents did not come for moonshine like most would assume. They were not looking for illegal alcohol, recipes, or hidden stills. They came for something else. Something Digger believed he had hidden long ago. Something he had tried to bury in silence, rather than in the ground. The road to his workshop was rough and winding. It curved sharply through thick trees and overgrown brush. Fence posts, rusted with age, leaned at angles, and wild vines wrapped themselves around anything standing still long enough. It was not a road you would ever find by accident. It was a road meant to keep strangers away. The workshop itself was small and built simply, but it had a presence. Locals said that at night the workshop hummed softly, almost like there was something moving inside it, even when Digger was gone. Some said they saw light glowing from its single window long after he had walked home. The place felt like it remembered things, like it held old thoughts. Inside, the air always smelled of pine dust and old burn marks from years of heating copper and working with fire. The smell stayed on Digger's clothes even after he left the workshop each day. Copper coils hung on the walls like curled snakes, frozen in mid-motion. Barrels leaned together in quiet stacks. Some were empty, others still held the remains of old mat. In the center of the room stood a workbench with scratches and stains from years of use. On it rested a welding mask, 2 old hammers, and a leather notebook, thick and worn as if it carried stories no one else had ever heard. To most people, the workshop looked harmless, just the place of a man who worked with his hand and liked to stay busy. But the agents saw things differently. They noticed places where dust should have gathered, but didn't. They noticed that the floorboards had drag marks, as if heavy things had been moved back and forth many times. They saw copper shaped with precision, beyond simple hobby work. They saw barrels marked with codes instead of words. They saw intention. Then they noticed the locked door in the back. The padlock was old and heavy, the kind used for something valuable or secret. A small metal cart sat beside the door. Tools no one recognized were placed neatly on it. Some of the tools looked hand-forged. Others looked like they belonged in a medical facility instead of a workshop. One agent lifted a cloth on the cart. Beneath it was a crate that looked burned from the inside. The wood edges were dark. The nails were warped and bent outward. It looked like whatever was inside had tried to push its way out. A quiet discomfort settled over the room. No one spoke. Another agent noticed faint, hollow tapping coming from under the floor. Workshops are usually built on solid foundation, but this one had empty space beneath it. They ordered the floor to be opened. The crew pried up boards and removed layers of rope and cloth. All of it had been placed carefully, not randomly. Finally, they revealed a crawl space below the workshop, a space carved out intentionally, large enough to move in, but small enough to force someone to stoop. The air that rose from below was cold and damp. 2 agents descended the ladder and turned on their light. What they saw did not look like storage. It looked carefully arranged. There were rows of glass jars set into the walls of the crawl space. Each jar was sealed with wax. Each had a date written in careful handwriting. The handwriting started neat on the older jars and grew shakier with the newer one. Inside some jars were pieces of cloth. In others were pale shapes that looked like they once belonged to living things, flattened against the glass. Nearby were metal trays, stacked one on top of another. They were stained dark and had the look of something that had been heated many times. The stains were not from food or tool. They were from something else, something organic. At the back of the crawl space were wooden crates tied with rope. The rope was knotted in an old mountain pattern, a knot used by people who learned their skills long before there were manuals. One crate was cracked open just enough for light to slip inside. Inside that crate were small copper plates, engraved with swirling marks, shapes that looked like they recorded measurements or phases of something. The plates were stacked with care, not thrown, not forgotten. Then the agents saw something easily missed. Lengths of braided hair tied neatly with twine and placed in a deliberate pattern, not discarded, saved, preserved. The agents carried everything up into the workshop, the jars, the tray, the hair bundle. They logged each item. The workshop felt heavier as each piece surfaced, like memories being lifted into open air. But the more they found, the more it became clear that this was not about moonshine. It was about remembering something that was gone, something that had slipped out of the world but had not slipped out of someone's heart. Back inside the workshop, another agent examined the walls and discovered that the workshop extended beyond what official building records showed. Someone had built an extra room and hidden it behind a false wall. The wood used to seal it looked newer than the rest. They forced the wall open. Inside was a small room filled with copper parts, arranged with exact detail, coils wrapped tightly, tubing shaped intentionally. Copper masks lay on a table in different stages of completion. They were shaped like human faces. Each mask had holes near the temples and jaw where metal had been pressed carefully inward. They were not meant to decorate anything. They were designed to fit someone. Beside the copper masks was a notebook. It did not contain instructions for making moonshine. It contained names and dates. Some names were old, some recent. The notes next to the names were short and unclear. Repair, adjustment, too late. Not criminal language, but not normal either. On the wall was a photograph of Digger with his father standing outside a funeral home. Someone had written beneath the picture, "We keep what the world forgets." The workshop suddenly felt less like a hiding place for illegal work and more like a sanctuary for grief that had nowhere to go. But the investigation was not over. The agents still needed to open the last drawer, the drawer that had been locked and sealed so tightly that it seemed it had not been opened in years. And what they found next would change everything. The last drawer sat under the work table. It was old and swollen with age, as if it had not been opened in many years. Dust lined the edges in a thick border. When the agents tried to pull it open, it resisted like something inside did not want to be seen. After several tries, the drawer finally slid out with a harsh scraping sound. A smell drifted out immediately. It was sharp and chemical, like old medical rooms. The inside of the drawer was filled with thin copper strips. Each strip was curled like dried leaves. On every strip, there was a small mark shaped like a crescent. Next to the crescent, there were numbers pressed into the metal. Each copper strip also had a small indentation shaped like a human tooth. The agents froze. These were not tools. These were records. Records kept in metal instead of ink. Something about the marks suggested that someone had pressed teeth into the copper strips on purpose. Tooth marks are personal. They are one of the only things that stay unique over time. Copper does not rot. It does not fade. It keeps shape. Whoever made these strips wanted to preserve identity. Below the copper strips were small glass vials filled with thick, cloudy liquid. The vials were marked Phase 1, Phase 2, Phase 3. The last vial had its label carved deeper than the other, almost to the point of scratching through the glass. The liquid inside moved slowly, like syrup. These were tests of something, attempts, progress tracked in silence. At the very bottom of the drawer lay a notebook. It was different from the others. The pages were filled with fast handwriting, squeezed tightly into the space. Many notes were crossed out. The writing carried urgency. The same phrase repeated many times in the margin. Don't let them slip away. The final page of the notebook contained only one sentence. If the world won't remember them, I will. This changed the tone of everything the agents had seen. They were no longer looking at evidence of crime. They were looking at evidence of someone trying desperately to hold on to people who were gone. Someone who could not accept loss. While the agents examined the drawer, others surveyed the grounds outside. Behind the workshop, they noticed something strange in the dirt. A dark circular shape where nothing grew. Not grass, not weeds. The circle looked as if heat had burned the ground long ago, and the earth had never recovered. In the center of the circle was a metal hatch, almost hidden by vines. The hatch was locked with newer padlocks, as if someone had sealed it recently. They cut the padlocks and opened the hatch. Warm air escaped, carrying a scent that was sweet and also sharp, like sugar mixed with disinfectant. A ladder led down into a chamber lined with blackened brick. Copper pipes ran along the wall, all leading toward the center. There was a metal stand shaped like it was meant to hold something, not objects, but something living. Scorch marks spread outward from the stand in circular layers, like heat waves captured in stone. The walls had faint shapes burned into them, human shapes, not full bodies, but silhouettes stretched long, like heat had pulled memories into the wall. The agents looked at each other and understood without speaking. This place was not built to destroy something. It was built to change something. The chamber did not show violence. It showed attempts. Attempts to hold on to someone who was gone. Attempts to keep memories from fading. Attempts to preserve faces that time had taken. Back inside the workshop, they searched through filing drawers. Most drawers held receipts and copper orders. But at the bottom of the last drawer, they found a heavy book, a ledger. The names in the ledger were familiar to those who grew up in the mountain towns nearby. People who had passed away, people the community had mourned, people who were gone and had been grieved. Beside each name were 3 columns: found, held, released. Some names had a mark in all 3 columns. Others had only 1 mark. Some names were crossed out with thick ink. Some marks were rewritten as if someone tried over and over again to change an outcome. Near the center of the ledger was 1 name without any letters, only a date, circled again and again until the paper thinned. Under the date, a short note read, "Too small to bury, too small to forget." The agents did not speak. The meaning was clear. This was not the work of a man trying to harm. This was the work of a man trying desperately to remember. The final room was discovered behind a rolling tool chest. The marks on the floor showed it had been moved many times, pushed aside, and then pushed back as if someone could never decide whether the room should remain hidden or open. When the door opened, the air felt still and heavy. Inside were shelves filled with plaster molds of faces. Each one had initials carved into the forehead. Some molds were cracked, some were smoothed and polished. Some looked like they had been made with careful hands that were shaking. In the middle of the room was a single mold smaller than all the others, a child's. The initials beside it were EM. Next to it was a small bent piece of copper engraved with the words, "Too small to forget." Everything made sense then. The jars, the copper plates, the engravings, the maps, the chamber, the masks. This was not about cruelty. It was about grief that had nowhere to go. It was about someone who could not let time erase the faces of the people he cared about. It was about trying to hold on to memory when memory becomes painful. The agents took everything as evident, even though none of it proved crime. The workshop was shut down. Digger was questioned, but the law could not charge him. There was nothing illegal about trying to remember someone. When asked why he had done all this, Digger simply said, "The mountain forgets faster than people think." As the agents left, some of them thought they heard faint breathing inside the workshop wall. Maybe it was only the wind, or maybe it was something memory leaves behind when it refuses to fade.